Okay, this lesson for the Quantity Project class addresses theological determinism. In a brief evaluation of a few times this was discussed and brought to my attention, it was always in an up or down, either you're for it or against it. And that really avoids the nature of theological determinism. The word determinism comes from boule, plan, determinate, or counsel. We have dilemma, which is will or desire. So what we'll demonstrate here is that it's mathological as opposed to pathological, from pathos, which refers to something, let's say emotive. Mathological, the word disciple, the Koine term for a disciple is mathetes. Notice that right there. That's M, A, and then theta is TH. So there's the word math. So that's more ordered, cognitive. Pathos, like the word passion, would be more affective side. So now that we're looking at theological determinism in light of its nature, mathological, and we're called disciples, mathetes, so we certainly won't be able to find anything unusual about it. But the opposition to theological determinism is that it's perceived as, I suppose, as absent or void of agent causation of man, which the Bible teaches, that it is like William James once spoke of, that block universe, that cold, hard, impersonal determinism. But I think once we look at it from a mathological view, and don't go out, I mean, this is not an anti-Calvin. Most Calvinists would have no idea how to transfer or apply concepts, let's say, in math, or even notice math here. So it really wouldn't be, you won't be able to argue with anyone because they won't know how to respond. They've never thought about it. So let's just look at it and take our circle for a moment. We have a diameter, that straight line. Well, that's not a straight line, but anyway, close enough. Our circle has a center point. Well, from the center to the edge of our circle, this is called radius. And then this length here is diameter. And then this total length, this complete circle, well, we'll do it this way. This circle, this is the circumference. Well, we didn't have room for it. So there's a circumference. So there's relationships with this. We have 2r. Well, you remember area of a circle equals pi r squared. And then 2, let's say, diameter equals 2r. So what's the circumference? Well, before we go any further, let's talk about this number pi and what it is. It's 3.14, then it's 159, and then it's not repeating decimal. I think I said that once. It never repeats. This is infinite. This goes on. This is infinite. It goes on forever. Go ahead, let's just keep using word. It's eternal. It goes on and on and on. So what's the pi, though, itself is a ratio. We've done a lot of work noticing that the word ratio is the Latin term from our word logos or logos. So what's the ratio? Well, pi equals the circumference over diameter. There. But where's the 3 come from? Well, for example, let's say we take this diameter. Let's say we could just lift it. We can't, but let's say I take that off there, and I want to count how many times this line can wrap around. This diameter can follow this circle. So if we started here, we would go, let's say, a certain distance. There would be 1 time. So the diameter, we could stretch it, wrap it around once. So +1, then we could go +2. And this won't be to scale, but anyway. So then we can take it again and come all the way here, and it's just not quite far. So it's +3. So we have 3 diameters. Well, this little section here, if you want to know what that is, that's 0.14. That's where we get this 1,4. And of course, taking it on out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 digits is what we've done. But you say, well, what does that mean? Well, let's notice then, if diameter is 2 times r and the area of that circle is pi times r squared, we're seeing pi used here. Well, now what would pi do as far as their circumference? We have 2 pi r. But what's interesting about this, how do we have an infinite number used? Well, it's also pi is called an irrational number. Notice that, irrational number. It's a ratio, but yet in number it can't be expressed as in a ratio, for example. It can't be a number above another number, for example. It can't be an integer above an integer. So, knowing that, we now see that the mathological nature of theological determinism, as the Bible teaches, we can demonstrate that there is no contradiction between, let's say, constant, I'll just say finite, let's say rational number plus or times, these operators, times an irrational, and it still equals the constant outcome. So you can take this, and now this is the relationship of any size circle. You'll always have this ratio of the circumference over the diameter. But what's remarkable is we don't see a contradiction in mathological reasoning and expression that would show a problem with the use of an irrational number with infinite as the decimal continues to go out. I'm sure with computers they've gone out to billions or even maybe a trillion by now, I don't know. But that's happening. But you notice there's no contradiction. So let's move over here to where I'm more comfortable using my whole numbers, my integers. And then let's just do 2 plus 2 equals 4. Now, a person that doesn't know the mathological reality of theological determinism would say, well, there it is. That's determined. 2 plus 2 is always 4. Well, it's just, we can rewrite this expression. And mathologically speaking, rewrite the expression. In an infinite number of ways. And what? It will always be the same. So here, easier for me at least, we can take 6 over 3 plus 6 over 3 equals 12 over 3. But you notice 6 over 3 is 2, and 6 over 3 is 2, and 12 over 3 is 4. So what have we just demonstrated irrefutably, but mathologically? So if you were to hear, let's say, let's just say it, let's just hypothetically, I don't know any Calvinists that would even be aware of what they were saying. But let's say a Calvinist began to argue something contrary to this. They would be moving into, and unknowingly, so be respectful, but they would be getting into the area of pathological, which would find the person not realizing. They would be saying that not only does it have to be 2 plus 2 equals 4, but it has to be the number 2 plus the number 2 equals 4 as this is written out. They would never realize that arguing against this and arguing against this is due to their own ignorance of the mathological nature of theological determinism. Now that's ironic, isn't it? But these are the types of things you will overlook, you will never notice. As a matter of fact, you can read an article, I'll include it in the discussion or the comment section and try to find it somewhere. But I'll include what I can. And I'll try to make a link to it if I can find it, and I'll put that in there. But it talks about how we don't use, let's say, math, for example, that we learn in school. I was tutoring in math once, a child and a younger person, a student, and they said, when will we ever use this? And I said, well, I don't see in your future where you'll ever be involved in any complicated mathematics or higher math. And they thought of it, they got it. We both laughed. I was just trying to let them know that this is teaching us critical thinking, how to think, teaching us mathologic, which is a Bible word, for example. So is pathos. It's just emotive, it's passion. And so it's really not a question of do we support or reject theological determinism, because if it is, as some people say, pathological. Let's say I noticed Dr. Leighton Flowers was in a discussion where someone was advocating some expression of determinism, and Dr. Flowers rejected it, saying that's theological determinism. Well, I really would have liked to heard him say that's a pathological expression of theological determinism, which, when understood according to the Bible and its mathological nature, doesn't have a contradiction. Matter of fact, it actually refutes the idea. It's similar to, you can read papers, there's one out there called The End of Classical Determinism, which, because of further research, they've noticed now that some of the assumptions under classical determinism were a lot like pathological determinism. Now, the person, let's say you're speaking with, begins to debate and argue, they are being pathological. And that happens when we have, let's say, a blind spot, or we have missing data, or we're not current, or we don't see the transfer and applicability of math to such things as theological determinism. We can somewhat leave ourselves out of the conversation. So that's enough. And let me see if I can stand out of the way here. So that's more like my speed there. This over here, this a little bit makes a little more thought there. And so it's interesting though. You can still, this was learned early on. It's more arithmetic, but it's mathological. So theological determinism, you can put the word theological in front of any Bible word, as long as you have the correct understanding of the nature and, let's say, the core features of this word that you're making a phrase, a theological determinism, and then you can show this. But it's really fascinating that the word disciple has as its root there, or the core part of the word is, chief part of the word is math. So have a blessed day. Enjoy this lesson.